During the Peloponnesian War, a group of Vandals went around Athens knocking the phalluses off Hermes, the stelaes, with the head and phallus of the Greek god Hermes, which were often outside houses. The incident provided Thyoncinid with the springboard to recount the story of Harmodius and Aristogeiton, two homosexual lovers credited by the Athenians with overthrowing tyranny. That was written 2,500 years ago, and today I'd like to use that as a springboard to tell you about the exact same story. When we think of democracy, our mind often goes to ancient Athens. At various points throughout its history, Athens opened up its voting, debate, and public offices to various people considered citizens. Now, of course, not everyone was citizens, and slaves and women in particular were completely left out of the system, so it wasn't perfect, but it was the first step in what would become modern democracy. At least in most modern academic tellings of democracies. In America, we often talk about this in context of how Greek all the buildings in the Capitol look, and how Jefferson totally had a hard-on for, all the Greeks. But we very rarely talk about the gay love triangle that, no joke, saved democracy. One of the first heroes to fight for democracy was Solon, an ancestor of Plato. Well, Solon had some, progressive for the time ideas. His sons, Hippias and Hipparchus, didn't. Hippias was the archon, basically the political leader of Athens, and he continued a lot of his father's unpopular policies. But it was his brother, Hipparchus, who was the real asshole. See, he was the minister of culture, and he used his extensive power over culture and religion to get his way in whatever he wanted. And one day what Hipparchus wanted was a young man named Harmonius, who, unbeknownst to him, was dating a young man named Aristogeiton. Now let's jump to the ancient text for a quick description of our two heroic lovers. Harmonius was the flower of youthful beauty, and Aristogeiton, a citizen of the middle rank of life, was his lover and possessed him. The relationship between Harmonius and Aristogeiton has been a subject of scholarly debate, but I think it's pretty clear from this passage that they were at least engaged in some type of socially recognized loving union. With pedestry being what it was and all. Because yada yada Foucault, we of course can't say they're in a monogamous homosexual relationship because those terms weren't really applicable to the people at the time, and it wasn't part of the lived sociological reality of Harmonius and Aristogeiton's lives. But, put bluntly, these two guys fucked. And, I don't know about their private lives, but they might have been in love. And they for sure saved democracy. And that's pretty fucking cool. In drawing parallels between the struggles in that story and the struggles of modern-day peoples can give us a certain type of power that only narrative has. Back to the story, though. Hipparchus asked Harmodius out one day, and was crushed when he found that Harmodius was already taken. He sulked back off to his palace and plotted his revenge. He would invite Harmonius' sister to perform a ceremonial task at the Pan-Athenian Games. But, during the event, Hipparchus publicly shamed Harmonius' sister for not being a virgin. So this guy gets rejected, and he uses his considerable political and religious power to slut-shame the guy's sister in front of literally all of Athens. Yeah, I told you he was an asshole, right? Harmonius is naturally pissed, and he goes back to Aristogeiton, and the two realize that the only solution is, of course, to kill the tyrants. They decided to carry out their plot during the game, since they could gather a group of large conspirators without people getting suspicious. They gave each revolutionary a secret dagger to hide within their myrtle wreath, and then when the moment came, they'd stab as many tyrannical government people as they could, taking them all out. But it didn't exactly go off all according to plan. I'll jump back to the ancient text to give you the play-by-play for the climax here. At last the festival had arrived, and Hippias with his bodyguard was outside the city of Ceramis, arranging how the different parts of the procession were to proceed. Harmodius and Aristogeiton had already their daggers and were getting ready to act, when seeing one of their accomplices talking familiarly with Hippias, who was easily of access to everyone, they took fright and concluded that they were discovered, and on the point of being taken, and eager, if possible, to be revenged first upon the man who had wronged him, and for whom they had undertaken all this risk, they rushed, as they were, within the gates. and meeting with Hipparchus by the Electorium, recklessly fell upon him at once, infuriated Aristogiton by love and Harmodius by insult, and smote him and slew him. Aristogiton escaped the guards at that moment, through the crowds running up, but was afterwards taken and dispatched in no merciful way. Harmodius was killed on the spot. After seeing his brother killed and failing to catch the conspiracy, Hippias tightened his grip over Athens, becoming an even more evil tyrant. Shortly after, in 508 BC, a Spartan army came through Athens and deposed Hippias, leaving room for democracy once more. A man named Celestines established a new order of democracy that, some argue, continues to this very day. So while Harmodius and Aristogiton may not have succeeded in their task of deposing their government, they planted the seeds that would become modern democracy. The two became important political symbols in Athens. Their ancestors were given lifetime free food at City Hall, reserved front row seats in the theater, and special exemptions from certain religious duties. And the couple were popular subjects of bronze statues placed all around Athens to celebrate the newfound democracy and show that they have no tolerance for tyrants. Like all of Greek history, this story is highly fictionalized for a very specific political purpose. Their story presents a world where we must always fight to create an existence that's amenable to us. It highlights people trapped in the machinations of something bigger than themselves, striking out to create a world that can allow for their own pursuit of happiness. This story is likely as relatable to queer folks now as it was 2,500 years ago. So wherever you're suffering out there, my queers, just remember our brothers, Harmodius and Aristogiton, who died for our freedom.